In the opulent heart of Zahram Palace, billionaire Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury sat silently behind a grand desk of carved mahogany, his sharp gaze fixed on the golden scroll that bore a contract not of oil deals or land acquisitions, but of a human life. His lips curled into a thin line as he read the name once more, his own daughter, Aaliyah. The words branded across the parchment felt heavier than the weight of his jewels, a decree dictated by pride and society's cold standards. Too ugly to deserve more, the merchant nobles whispered, and so Rashad had arranged her marriage to a distant, noble house far from the shimmering dunes of his empire. The vast chandeliers above cast a soft glow over the marble floors, reflecting like stars fallen in the desert night. Outside, the endless expanse of golden sand rippled with the evening breeze, the scent of blooming jasmine mingling with the faint trace of exotic spices carried on the wind, reminders of power, tradition, and the strict codes Rashad upheld. His empire was a fortress of control, yet inside, his heart clenched with a mix of regret and unconquered bitterness. Aaliyah stood in the shadowed corridor, her slender figure draped in a simple silk gown that barely masked the fragility beneath. Her emerald eyes, sharp with quiet defiance, held captive a storm of pain and silent rebellion. She heard the hushed murmurs. "A shame to the Al-Khoury name," the courtiers whispered. And though her lips trembled, she dared not show weakness. The reflection in the polished glass told a harsh truth. Scars that marred her delicate face, remnants from a cruel fire that had stolen her beauty and her mother's warmth years ago. Yet beneath the scars, an unyielding strength glimmered like a hidden oasis in the desert sands. Tonight, fate had drawn her toward a destiny she had never sought. As the heavy doors of the grand hall creaked open, Aaliyah's eyes met his. Sheikh Malik al-Nasser, the enigmatic noble she was now wed to, cloaked in shadows, and a reputation that whispered both danger and desire. His dark eyes, sharp and unreadable, scrutinized her with a cool indifference that froze her very soul. The opulent robe he wore shimmered like midnight waves. His silence was a fortress impenetrable. "Your Highness," her voice barely escaped, coated with years of pain and a glimmer of desperate hope. Malik's gaze lingered just long enough for a flicker of something. Curiosity? Surprise? To ignite beneath his composed mask. "Do you truly believe this union is anything but a transaction?" His tone was edged with ice, dismissive. Aaliyah's breath caught. "I do not hold illusions, but I am not merely a piece to be traded." A tense silence stretched between them, the air thick with unspoken battles. Around them, the palace held its breath, the weight of centuries pressing upon their shoulders. Yet beneath Malik's ruthless exterior, a flicker of something raw and unexpected stirred. A cautious fascination with the woman he had judged so swiftly. A beauty unseen, forged in resilience and unspoken truths. Just as the night seemed poised to swallow them both in its endless heat. The sharp clatter of footsteps echoed from the chambers beyond. A veiled figure slipped into the hall, whispers of a secret past entwining with the present. Malik's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with shadows of peril hidden beneath his calm facade. There was more to this marriage than power or pride. The desert winds carried a secret that neither could ignore. And before the next secret of this desert kingdom is revealed, make sure you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be forged, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already caught your attention. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you believe is coming? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The veiled figure moved with silent steps, a shadow threading through the opulence of Zahram Palace. Malik's gaze hardened instantly, the faint glimmer of something darker flickering like an ember in his eyes. Aaliyah's breath hitched, caught between the rigid control this man wielded and the mystery that now unraveled before them. The figure stopped. A woman, her face hidden beneath the delicate lace of a black veil, but her voice sliced through the thick air like a knife. "Malik al-Nasser," she began, her tone laced with familiarity and warning. "You cannot ignore what lies beneath this marriage. The threads woven by your father's ambition have bound us all. There is more at stake than pride or tradition." Malik's jaw clenched, the elegant calm momentarily shattered. "Speak quickly," he demanded. "I will tolerate." "No interference in my house." Aaliyah stepped forward, surprised by a sudden surge of courage. "Who is she?" Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded, a tumultuous wave crashing against the fragile shore of her hope. The veiled woman's eyes, dark and impassioned, met Aaliyah's. "I am Layla, once your mother's closest friend and the keeper of secrets none here dare to confront." The weight of the name pressed against the walls of the grand hall, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Aaliyah's fingers curled into the silken folds of her gown, the past unspooling in her mind, as the years she'd fought to bury flickered in painful fragments. "Secrets?" Malik's icy voice was sharp, suspicion flickering to rage. What secrets could tarnish this alliance further? Layla's gaze drifted to the golden scroll, resting heavy in Rashad's absence from the room, a symbol of ruthless deals disguised as marriage vows. "This union is more than a transaction," she warned. "It is a trap, set to silence those who threaten the Empire's illusion." "Aaliyah, you carry a truth that could unravel everything." Aaliyah's breath caught, like a blade pressed to her throat. The pain she'd forged into strength now trembled in the face of these words. Did she truly hold the key to a dangerous truth? Or was this another chain forged by the very men who sold her dreams to the highest bidder? Malik's dark eyes narrowed, searching Aaliyah's face for betrayal, for weakness, finding instead a fragile courage that both infuriated and captivated him. "Tell me," he said, voice low and sharp. "What are you hiding, Aaliyah?" She met his gaze, emerald flames burning behind the scars. "I am not the pawn you believe me to be," she whispered, "and I refuse to be silenced." A flicker of admiration sparked briefly within Malik's guarded demeanor before the walls rose again, cold and impenetrable. The veiled woman moved closer, voice dipped to a conspiratorial hush. the truth about your father, Malik. The empire's foundation is built on blood and deceit. And Aaliyah, she holds proof. The room's golden accents seem to darken under the weight of Layla's revelation, the air thick with danger and unresolved pasts. Malik's hand twitched, fingers brushing the dagger concealed beneath his robe, a reminder of the power and menace that lay beneath his noble exterior. Yet his gaze did not leave Aaliyah's. For the first time, the fortress he'd built around his heart wavered. Aaliyah's pulse raced, the intoxicating mix of fear and defiance coursing through her veins. Was this the moment when alliances would shatter? Or could a fragile trust bloom amid the ruins? Suddenly, the heavy doors behind them burst open. Rashad al-Khoury entered, his presence like a storm rolling over the desert plains, as commanding as the sun's fierce glare. His sharp eyes flicked over the tense assembly, a hard smile playing on his lips. "So predictable," Rashad said, voice thick with scorn. "The little game of secrets and whispers. But this empire does not crumble because of ghosts from the past." Malik's expression darkened. "Father, your empire stands on lies, and you have chosen to bury the truth beneath your pride." Aaliyah took a step forward, emboldened. "I will not be the silence in your story, Sheikh Billionaire." Her words carried the weight of all her suffering, her hope, her rebellion. Rashad's gaze sharpened, his smile fading under the intensity in her eyes. "Be careful, daughter. You tread on dangerous ground." The air between them crackled with unspoken threats. The grandeur of the palace, suddenly a cage, sealed tight. As Rashad's sharp gaze met Malik's, the tension snapped, a silent battle flaring beneath layers of honor and ambition. Then, a sudden tremor passed through the room. A messenger rushed in, breathless, bearing a note sealed with the mark of a rival emirate. Malik broke the seal with a glance of dark foreboding, before his eyes widened in shock. "The desert burns with rumor and revolt," he whispered grimly. "Our enemies move, while we argue. Amongst ourselves." All eyes turned, the momentary truce shattered by the cold truth of war, creeping toward their doorstep. Aaliyah's hand clenched, the fragile hope of new beginnings slashing against the harsh reality of power struggles and deadly secrets. Malik's voice, low and steady, carried across the silent hall. "We stand at the edge of a storm, and the choice we make in this palace will decide who survives." The veiled woman's eyes gleamed, the fire in her voice barely contained. "Secrets will rise like sandstorms, and only those prepared to face the truth will endure." Aaliyah met Malik's gaze, the weight of their forced alliance settling like desert dust between them. And just as the night seemed poised to swallow Zahram Palace whole, the flicker of a shadow moved behind Rashad, a hidden figure, watching, waiting, whose allegiance could tip the balance of power forever. The palace held its breath, and somewhere, buried beneath the heat and glittering sands, a secret deeper than any had imagined waited, ready to emerge and shatter all they thought they knew. The golden light of the chandeliers flickered against the polished marble as Rashad al-Khoury's sudden entrance shifted the already tense atmosphere to something almost electric. His presence was a storm unleashed, his commanding aura swallowing the grand hall as every eye instinctively turned toward him. The whispers fell silent, the weight of his authority pressing down like the desert sun. Malik's gaze darkened further, a tempest barely tamed behind the shield of noble composure. His father's words, laced with disdain and a cruel certainty, cut deeper than any blade. Blood and deceit. Such accusations were not new, but hearing them spoken aloud in this palace, amidst the gilded walls, made them sharp and real. Aaliyah stood tall, the faint scar along her cheek catching the light like a shard of glass, a reminder of pain endured and hope yet unbroken. She felt the undeniable pull of defiance stir within her chest, stronger than fear, as she locked eyes with Rashad. "I am no pawn in your empire," she said, voice steady, but charged with the fire of 1,000 silent rebellions. "I hold secrets that could shatter the foundations you built with greed and cruelty." The room seemed to contract, as if the very air feared the truth she threatened to unleash. Rashad's eyes narrowed, the shimmer of arrogance slipping away to reveal a flicker of unease. Beneath, his empire was a fortress, yes, but every fortress had cracks. Malik's fingers twitched involuntarily near the hilt of his dagger, muscles taut with readiness. Yet his voice, when it cut through the silence, held a curious blend of command and something unspoken, admiration perhaps. "She has spirit," he murmured, almost reluctantly, "stronger than I anticipated." Layla, still veiled, yet no less a storm, stepped forward with a grace that belied the urgency in her message. "The empire's foundation rests on blood spilled in shadows and lies buried in the dunes," she said softly, eyes burning with a fierce light. "Aaliyah carries proof of betrayals and debts long forgotten by those who claim to rule." Aaliyah's breath hitched, the weight of legacy and secrets crashing over her like a relentless tide. For years, she had buried these truths beneath the ruins of her past, beneath the scars that marked her skin and heart alike. Now, with every secret whispered aloud, those burdens grew heavier, but her resolve hardened. Malik's gaze sharpened, hunting for signs of deceit. But what he found instead was a vulnerability veiled by steel, a fire that neither wealth nor scars could extinguish. "If these secrets exist," he said quietly, "why does your father cling to the throne so fiercely? What does he fear will be lost if the truth surfaces?" Before Aaliyah could answer, Rashad's laugh echoed, a sound cold as desert night. "Truth is a luxury reserved for those who do not need power," he said flatly. "I will not let foolish ideals topple what I have crafted." His words stirred something dark in Malik's eyes, a shadow pulling tighter around his expression. The fragile alliance between them fractured further, but the looming threat outside the palace walls demanded attention. The messenger's arrival shattered the momentary silence like a thunderclap, his hurried footsteps pounding the marble as he handed Malik a sealed note. The hall held its breath as Malik broke the wax, unveiling the harbingers of unrest. "The desert royals," he murmured grimly, eyes hardening. "Rival emirates stir rebellion. They wait for weakness. They expect us to fall into chaos. Rashad's shoulders stiffened, pride giving way to a flicker of something unreadable, a rare glimpse of fear or calculation. "Then we must quash these flames before they spread," he said, voice coldly resolute. Aaliyah's heart pounded in rhythm with the storm building beyond the palace walls. Here, in this gilded cage of tradition and treachery, her fate was entwined with men whose power could either destroy or protect her. Malik stepped closer, the space between him and Aaliyah charged with unspoken tension. His next words were a whisper, yet they carried the weight of a desert gale. "This empire, built on lies, will demand loyalty and sacrifice. Are you prepared for what lies ahead?" Her eyes met his, emerald embers blazing defiantly. "I am no longer the frightened girl behind a veil," she said. "I will face the storm with you or against you." The veiled woman's gaze flickered, sensing the fragile alliance taking shape amidst the ruinous grandeur. "Beware the shadows within these walls," Layla warned. "Enemies come not only from without, but from those who hide their daggers closest to the throne." Suddenly, a soft rustle caught Aaliyah's attention. From the far corner of the hall, nearly swallowed by shadow, a figure stepped forward, silent, unseen by all but her. A glint of cold steel caught the chandelier's light, a concealed blade pressed tight against a silk sleeve. Rashad's eyes flared with recognition, narrowing as the figure's identity flashed across his mind. "So, the serpent reveals itself at last," he hissed. Malik's stance hardened, instincts sharpening. "Who dares threaten Zahram Palace under our watch?" he demanded. The veiled figure lifted her face, revealing a familiar glint in her eyes, a reflection of old wounds and deeper betrayals. Her voice, low and chilling, sliced through the thick air. "Not all debts are paid with gold, Malik al-Nasser, and some shadows refuse to be buried beneath the sands." Aaliyah's pulse quickened, sensing the gathering storm within and beyond the palace. The fragile threads of trust woven between her and Malik threatened to unravel in the presence of this new threat. A threat that was woven inseparably with the past she longed to escape. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the desert night had sealed itself around them. The whispered secrets of Zahram Palace were no longer confined to shadows. They were ready to explode into a fate none could predict. And just as the first dagger poised to strike, a sudden, chilling silence fell over the hall, broken only by the click of a desert mirage, fragile and deceptive. Rashad al-Khoury's piercing gaze sliced through the shadows, locking on Malik and Aaliyah with a predator's certainty. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, simmering beneath the glittering chandeliers. Every breath carried the weight of ancestral expectations and the whispered secrets of a kingdom built on shifting sands. Malik's dark eyes, once cold and unyielding, flickered with something unreadable. The burden of his father's legacy pressed heavily against his chest, yet there was a hint of reluctant respect in his voice when he finally spoke. "You speak of proof, Aaliyah. But what price will truth demand from all of us?" Aaliyah squared her shoulders, the scarred reflection of her past fueling the fire inside. "The price of silence is far greater than any of us imagine. We have all been pawns in a game where the stakes are blood and betrayal." Layla's veiled figure moved closer, her voice a whisper that thundered through the grand hall. The empire's foundation is cracked, and those cracks will widen if we do not act. Your father's ambition blinds him to the dangers lurking beneath. Rashad's lips curled into a cold smile, one that didn't reach his unforgiving eyes. Danger is a constant companion in power. I have spent my life guarding this empire against threats, inside and out. Malik's fingers brushed the hilt of his dagger, muscles taut yet controlled. And yet you refuse to see that the greatest threat may come from within. Aaliyah's eyes met Malik's, their mutual understanding a fragile web weaving between them. Despite the cage of rivalry and suspicion, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of shared peril, a bond forged not by trust, but by necessity. The hall's heavy silence shattered when a distant rumble echoed through the palace walls, a reminder of the desert storm brewing just beyond, where whispers of rebellion and revolt skirted the edges of the empire. Rashad's expression hardened. Then we prepare. We show no weakness. The desert respects only strength. Malik nodded solemnly, stepping closer to Aaliyah, the space between them charged with tension and possibility. His voice dropped to a low murmur that only she could hear. This alliance, forced as it is, may be our only chance. But beware, the enemy wears many faces, and loyalty is a flame easily extinguished. Aaliyah's pulse quickened, her heart a wild drumbeat against the confines of tradition and duty. I'm not the broken girl behind the scar, she whispered fiercely. I will fight with everything I have, beside or against you. The veiled woman's eyes glimmered with a mix of urgency and warning. Secrets buried in silence will rise like the desert's fury. To survive, we must confront the shadows before they consume us all. Suddenly, a subtle movement caught Aaliyah's attention. A figure slipping through the ornate arches at the far end of the hall. Cloaked in darkness, their presence was barely noticed by the assembly, but not by Rashad. His lips tightened, eyes narrowing to cold slits. So, the serpent moves, Rashad hissed under his breath. Malik's gaze snapped toward the shadow, every muscle ready for conflict. Reveal yourself, he commanded, voice steady, but laced with iron. The figure paused, then stepped forward into the dim light, revealing the sharp angles of a man known only to a few, a master of secrets and silent wars, whose loyalty was as fluid as desert sands. His presence turned the atmosphere electric, a dangerous edge slicing through the fragile alliances. Rashad's contempt was palpable. You've meddled too long in affairs that don't concern you, Farid. Farid's cold smile was all menace. And yet I hold knowledge that could unravel the very foundation you cling to. The sands shift, Rashad, and with them the fate of your empire. Aaliyah's breath caught, the threads of danger weaving tighter around her. She realized then that the struggle for power was a serpent coiling within the palace itself, its fangs hidden in family ties and ancient grudges. Malik's gaze softened just for a moment as he looked at Aaliyah. Behind the warrior in her, a fragile hope flickered, one that dared to dream of more than an arranged union or a cold alliance. But the moment shattered as Rashad's voice cut through the charged silence. Enough! Your feuds will not distract us from the looming storm. The rival Emirates rally under whispered promises of our downfall. There will be no mercy. The warning settled like a scorching wind, stirring the silken drapes and the very souls within the palace. Aaliyah felt the weight of an empire trembling on the edge of chaos, the fragile threads of trust fraying at every touch. Malik stepped back, his jaw clenched with resolve. Then we must decide what we are willing to sacrifice to survive, and who we can trust when none remain untainted. Aaliyah swallowed her fear, the fire burning stronger now. I will reveal what I know when the time comes, but for now, we walk this razor's edge together. The veiled woman's voice was a soft threat. Be wary. Not all enemies come with swords drawn. Some strike from the shadows you least expect. As the echoes of their words faded into the vastness of Zahram Palace, a distant sound fractured the uneasy calm. A sharp, deliberate click echoing from deep within the labyrinthine halls. As if a lock had been released somewhere beyond their sight, Malik's eyes narrowed. The past is awakening. Aaliyah's pulse thundered in her ears. The fragile hope for redemption and truth now overshadowed by the promise of a danger lurking just out of reach. The palace breathed its ancient secrets, and in the dark corners, where silence once reigned, the shadows began to move. And in that very instant, a whisper slipped through the stillness, one that would soon shatter every illusion they had clung to, and expose the ultimate betrayal hidden within the heart of Zahram Palace. The heavy whispered silence that had settled over Zahram Palace shattered with a clatter, the echo of a lock unlatched somewhere deep within the labyrinthine corridors. Every eye turned instinctively toward the source, breaths held as if the room itself awaited a reckoning long overdue. Malik's dark gaze sliced through the dim light, sharp as a blade, searching the shadows for the unseen threat. His fingers curled tightly around the hilt of his dagger, muscles taut with a readiness born from years of hidden wars and whispered betrayals. Yet beneath the armor of iron resolve, a flicker of doubt stirred, born from the fragile trust he had reluctantly begun to forge with Aaliyah. Aaliyah herself stood rigid but unyielding, the faint scar along her cheek highlighted by the flickering candlelight that danced across the marble floors. Her emerald eyes scanned the room, sharp and defiant, yet beneath her steady breath lay a tempest of fear and fierce determination. This palace, built of glistening gold and ancient power, had become a cage, one she was beginning to understand held dangers beyond her past suffering. The veiled woman, Layla, stepped forward, her figure an elegant shadow amongst the splendor. "The walls we surround ourselves with," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper, "are the weakest when secrets claw their way to the surface." Rashad al-Khoury's eyes narrowed, the thin mask of calm fracturing for an instant to reveal his blistering pride and a well-guarded fear. Enough! His voice cut through the thick, charged atmosphere like a desert storm. There are enemies outside these walls who would see everything burn. We cannot afford infighting while blades are drawn beyond our gates. Malik's jaw clenched, tension coiling through his frame as the weight of duty settled heavier upon his broad shoulders. Outside threats are nothing compared to the venom that seeps within. Blood runs thicker than sand, Father. And today, the past claws back with sharpened teeth. Aaliyah stepped closer to Malik, her voice fierce, carrying the unmistakable presence of a woman who had fought shadows all her life and was no stranger to the fight ahead. We no longer have the luxury of ignorance. The Empire's foundation is cracking. If we do not confront what festers inside, all the armies in the desert will not save us. Rashad's stare burned with a cold fire. You speak like a rebel, Ali. Chaos, he gasped, voice cracking with urgency. Rival tribes rise. Rebel factions seize towns. The desert's fury is no longer distant. It is at our doorstep. Rashad's eyes darkened, the flicker of a man who could no longer hide behind his empire's polished surface. Then the fires we feared have begun. Send word to the commanders. Prepare the forces. Malik's gaze swept the room, landing on Aaliyah's steady form. This war will not be fought only with swords and spears, he said quietly. It will be a battle of secrets, alliances, and sacrifices. Aaliyah met his eyes, the embers of defiance roaring to life beneath the scars of her past. Then let them come. I refuse to be a hidden casualty in a war I do not understand. Rashad's laughter was a harsh rasp, laced with bitterness. You speak as if you have a choice. But remember, this palace does not forgive weakness. The veiled woman's eyes narrowed, reflecting the flickering flames of candelabras. And weakness will be found where trust is broken and shadows are welcomed. Suddenly, from behind the pillars lining the hall, a slate-gray hooded figure slipped forward. Slower than shadows, but no less deadly. His presence was a stark reminder that danger was never far, especially from those whose loyalties wavered like desert sands. The figure's gaze locked with Malik's, a silent challenge in the dead, tense air. Malik's voice was low and unwavering. Who are you? The man lifted his hood slowly, revealing eyes as cold and calculating as the desert night. Farid, he said simply, a reminder that the past refuses to die peacefully. Rashad's eyes flashed with fury. You meddle in affairs you do not understand. Leave or be cast out. Farid's lips curled in a grim smile. I've come bearing truths that no one wants to hear, especially you, Sheikh Billionaire. Aaliyah swallowed hard, the air growing suffocating as the walls around her seemed to close in. The tempest of secrets, betrayals, and impending war swelled to a crescendo, threatening to drown them all. Malik's gaze flickered to Aaliyah. Unspoken question lingering between their silent exchange. Was this the moment they would seize control of their fates, or be consumed by the very shadows they fought to escape? And beneath the golden chandeliers and ancient stones of Zahram Palace, where promises were made in whispered vows and broken in silence, a sharp sound echoed once more, the unmistakable click of a dagger sliding from its sheath, aimed at a heart that was yet unaware of the deadly threat, so close, so silent, so inevitable. The gathering in the grand hall seemed to pulse with a tension so thick it pressed against the walls, heavy as the desert heat outside. Rashad al-Khoury's cold smile vanished, replaced by a sharp glint of calculation, as his eyes darted between the veiled Layla and his formidable son, Malik. Aaliyah felt the weight of their unspoken battles settle over her like scorching sand dunes, unyielding, relentless. Malik's gaze shifted from the veiled woman to Aaliyah, a trace of warning hidden beneath his usually stoic expression. "You hold proof," Layla says, he murmured, voice low, but laced with steel. "This changes everything. But the question remains, who will wield it?" Aaliyah's fingers curled tightly around the edges of her silk gown. Her voice barely rose above the charged silence. "That proof is my burden and my weapon. It is the only thing standing between this empire and ruin." The golden chandeliers flickered above, casting moving shadows that seemed to reach for the secrets soon to be unraveled. Rashad's lips tightened, and for a fleeting moment, vulnerability flickered across his otherwise impenetrable mask. Aaliyah caught it, an unguarded fear of a man whose kingdom threatened to crumble from within. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut behind the messenger, who had delivered news of the eastern border's chaos. The sound struck like a thunderclap, silencing all but the harsh rasp of Rashad's voice. "The desert's fury is no longer distant," he said, eyes narrowing. "We have no time for internal strife." Malik stepped forward, his figure framed by ornate pillars, every line of his posture taut with readiness. "Walls cannot protect us from whispers, Father. Not when the greatest enemies hide beneath the golden roof we cherish." Aaliyah met Malik's eyes, emerald flames dancing with defiant resolve. Between them, the fragile alliance they forged pulsed. Volatile, but necessary. "We will need each other," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her heart. From the shadows, Layla moved closer, the lace veil barely concealing the fire in her gaze. "There is more," she warned. "The secrets you carry threaten to ignite more than rebellion. They may bring death to those who dare keep them hidden." A sudden movement near the dim corners of the hall caught Aaliyah off guard. A hooded figure slicked forward with a predator's stealth. Malik's hand instinctively hovered near the hilt of his dagger, muscles coiled like a spring. But his eyes held a complex mix of wariness and grudging acceptance. "Farid," Rashad spat, hatred carving his voice like a blade. "You haunt this palace like a viper in the sand." Farid's cold smile was all menace and chill. "And like the desert, I change with the winds, but I bring truths that will drown your empire in its own lies." His gaze swept the assembly with quiet contempt. Aaliyah's pulse quickened. Here was another thread in the tapestry of betrayal, weaving itself tighter around her. Stretching across time and blood, the past clawed through the gilded veneer of power, ready to expose the rot that no opulence could hide. Malik's eyes blinked to Aaliyah, their silent communication a fragile truce against the growing tempest. "We must prepare not just for war, but for the reckoning of secrets," he said quietly. "Are you ready to stand with me?" Her breath caught, the sharp taste of fear mingling with the fierce spark of defiance. "I will no longer hide behind scars or shadows," she declared. "If the empire falls, it will be with truth in our hands, not lies on our tongues." Rashad's laugh was cold and brittle. reverberating off marble, like the snapping of desert twigs underfoot. Truth is a luxury the powerful cannot afford. Layla's voice, low and urgent, sliced through the gathering darkness. Then prepare to lose more than power. Prepare to lose everything. The hall seemed to close in. The opulence that once promised. Sanctuary was now a gilded cage. Intrigue and mistrust tightened around each breath, each glance, each secret word. Aaliyah felt the shadows lengthen, swallowing the flicker of hope she clung to. A sudden, chilling click shattered the tension, sharper than the silence that preceded it. All eyes snapped toward a heavy stone column, where a hidden mechanism had stirred to life. Malik's gaze sharpened, every muscle coiled like a desert cat ready to pounce. "The past is waking," he whispered, voice rough with warning. Aaliyah's heart thundered in her chest, the fragile thread of trust between her and Malik stretching taut and threatening to snap. As the flickering candlelight danced across their faces, a sinister breath swept through Zahram Palace, the promise of an unmasking, a betrayal, a secret long buried, poised to strike the heart of power itself. The sound of the lock's click lingered like a whisper in the vast hall, its echo swallowing the brittle tension that clung to every breath. Malik's sharp gaze darted toward the shadowed corners, muscles coiled, eyes relentless. His hand hovered near the concealed dagger beneath his midnight robe, a silent sentinel, poised for the inevitable strike. Aaliyah's emerald eyes traced the slow movements around her. The gleam of opulence that once promised sanctuary now suffocated like desert heat, every thread of trust unraveling beneath the watchful eyes of enemies who hid behind silken masks and veiled threats. Her scarred face, illuminated by the flickering chandeliers, held a fragile defiance, even as her heart thundered against the prison of tradition. Layla remained poised, a dark flame wrapped in lace, her whispered words heavy. With warning. "The past is restless," she murmured. "The secrets long buried beneath Zahram's golden sands are clawing their way back. What we thought was safely locked away has begun to stir." Rashad al-Khoury's commanding presence filled the hall once more, his voice slicing through the fragile silence. "Secrets are dangerous luxuries. They do not topple fortunes. Only fools entertain such delusions." Yet beneath his harsh tone, a shadow flickered, fear masked in pride. Malik's gaze hardened. "Your empire's foundation is a house built on bones and betrayal, Father. Every secret you bury is a weight on us all, threatening to collapse." His voice was steady, but his eyes belied the storm raging beneath. Aaliyah stepped forward, unwavering amidst the heavy stares. "I carry those bones in my veins. The truth I bear is not a curse, but a reckoning, and it will come, whether you are ready or not." Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with the fierce will of a woman forged in fire and betrayal. The grand hall seemed to inhale sharply, the gilded walls closing in, pressing each word with the weight of royalty and ruin. Outside, the desert wind whispered secrets old as time, carrying promises, both cruel and unpredictable. Suddenly, the heavy doors swung open, admitting a rush of humid air and the scent of jasmine twisted with tension. A courier staggered in, clutching a scroll sealed with the emblem of a rival emirate. Malik snatched the message, breaking the seal with a practiced precision that betrayed no emotion, until his eyes widened, darkening like the desert night. "The northern tribes have risen," Malik announced grimly. "They march beneath banners of rebellion, spurred by promises of shattered chains and broken crowns." His voice was a dark thunder in the hushed hall. War is no longer a distant threat. It is at our gates. Rashad's facade of control cracked imperceptibly. "Then we show no hesitation. This empire will not fall to whispers and traitors." His words carried the steel of command, but Aaliyah saw the ghost of doubt flickering behind his cold gaze. Her fingers clenched the silken folds of her gown, heart swelling with a mixture of dread and determination. The battlefield was no longer only beyond the palace walls. It was within. Between alliances forged by necessity and vows of loyalty whispered in secrecy. Malik's voice lowered, a fierce edge woven through the calm. "We must decide. Blood will be spilled. Choose whether it will be in defense or destruction." He turned to Aaliyah, his gaze searching. "Will you stand at my side or against me in this storm?" Aaliyah met him unflinchingly, emerald flames burning bright. "I am no pawn in a game I refuse to lose. I will face the storm, not hidden behind scars, but wielding them as my shield." Her voice was a blade, sharp and clear in the quiet frenzy of the palace. Layla, still veiled, stepped closer, shadows clinging to her presence like a cloak. "Beware the shadows that wear familiar faces," she whispered. "Enemies do not always bear swords. Some hide beneath crowns and whispered promises." A flicker of movement caught Aaliyah's attention. From the distant end of the hall, a figure emerged from the veils of shadow, slow and deliberate. Malik's eyes narrowed, tension snapping like a spring in his body. "How long have you loitered in the dark?" Malik demanded, voice low but resolute. The man stepped forward, the flickering light catching the cold edges of his smile. "Farid." His eyes were steel and secrets, the weight of histories no one dared unearth. "Long enough," Farid replied calmly, "to know that the sands under your feet are shifting faster than you can stand." His lips curled with cruel amusement. "The empire you defend conceals rot beneath its gravitas. I bring the reckoning you all refuse to face." Rashad's jaw tightened, fury and fear warring silently behind his sharp glance. "Leave this palace, Farid. Your presence poisons what little order remains." Farid's gaze was a blade cutting through the heavy air. "Poison? No. I am the breath of truth, and the truth is about to choke you all." Aaliyah felt the room spin, the threads of fate tightening, suffocating. The fragile truce she had begun to weave with Malik threatened to unravel completely. Malik's voice was barely a whisper, yet it trembled with urgency. "We have no time for old grudges. The desert does not wait for the weary." Aaliyah looked deep into Malik's eyes, a question unspoken hanging between them. How much betrayal could they bear before the palace they called home turned against them? The air grew thick, the chandeliers above casting fractured light on faces etched with fear. pride, and uncertain hope. And then, before the storm outside could break through the gilded walls, the palace plunged into darkness. A single, sharp sound shattered the silence. A blade, swift and deadly, cleaved through silk and flesh. Gasps and screams exploded. The echo of a life hanging by a fragile thread filled the hall. Malik grasped Aaliyah's arm, his touch heavy with unspoken alarm, as all eyes turned toward the fallen shadow beside the throne. The game of secrets and power was no longer a war of whispers. It was a battle where every heartbeat could be the last. And the next move would decide the fate of Zahram Palace forever. The heavy air of Zahram Palace pressed against every soul in the grand hall, suffocating, yet alive with whispered threats and unspoken fears. Malik's eyes, dark pools simmering with distrust and reluctant hope, locked onto the figure of Aaliyah. Between them, the fragile truce they had stitched, together stretched taut, one misstep away from shattering. The palace chandeliers flickered erratically, as if mirroring the uncertainty that seeped into every corner. The golden light fractured the shadows that danced along the marble walls, and the scent of jasmine, once soothing, now carried the sharp edge of danger. Malik's hand twitched instinctively, brushing the dagger sheathed beneath his robe. He held his breath, heart beating a silent drum that reverberated through stone and silence. "Before the northern tribes have rallied," Malik said grimly, breaking the seal. His voice, low and heavy with gravity, carried to every inch of the room. "Promises of freedom and vengeance fuel their march. Our borders are breached. The war is no longer looming. It is here." Aaliyah felt the weight of the empire's fate tighten around her ribs like a vice. The scars that marked her face and soul ached, but beneath the pain blazed a fierce resolve. This war would not just be fought with swords, but with truths long buried in Saharan sands. Rashad stepped forward, regal yet wearied, eyes narrowed into hard slits. "Then we must burn brighter than the desert sun. Unite or fall divided." His words were iron, unbreakable but cold. Malik's gaze shifted between father and wife, heavy with unspoken accusation and reluctant understanding. "Uniting will require sacrifices," he murmured. "Sacrifices not all are willing to make." Aaliyah's voice cut through the shadows. "I have already paid my price in silence and exile. I will not lose more to lies or fear." The veiled Layla moved closer, a flame burning beneath the lace. "The true danger is from within," she breathed. "If you do not root out the venom hiding in this palace, the desert's fury will be the least of your concerns." Aaliyah's emerald eyes flickered with warning. Who among us carries poison disguised as loyalty? The room's patron shifted uncomfortably under the weight of her words. The tangled web of alliances and betrayals clawed at the edges of every smile and nod. Suddenly, a faint but deliberate sound echoed, a soft metallic click, subtle yet chilling. All heads turned sharply to the far end of the hall, where a broad pillar cast a thick shadow. Malik's gaze sharpened, muscles coiling like a wound spring. "Watch closely," he warned in a low growl. From the shadow stepped a silhouette, graceful, measured, deadly. The light caught the faint glint of a curved blade, concealed beneath silken robes. Every eye followed the figure's slow advance. Aaliyah's breath hitched, heart pounding against her sternum with icy urgency. The figure stopped just shy of the center, face obscured beneath a hood, but the voice was unmistakable, cold, cutting, and filled with menace. "Your empire has forgotten the cost of silence," the voice hissed. "Blood debts do not fade with time, nor can they be buried beneath gold and pride." Rashad's eyes narrowed to poisonous slits. "Farid," he spat the name like venom. "You should have died in the desert sands years ago." Farid smiled, a cruel slash of lips that promised ruin. "Death is no stranger to me, Rashad, but I have survived to bear the truth you fear, the truth that will topple your throne." Malik stepped forward, gaze locked on the intruder, every muscle a taut promise of confrontation. "You bring nothing but chaos and old grudges. Speak your poison quickly, or leave before more blood is spilled." Farid's eyes glinted beneath the hood. "I bring proof of betrayal, lies, and the empire built on bones you all refuse to see. Aaliyah has what I carry, the key to unmasking the curse shadowing your family." Aaliyah felt the air crackle as the room seemed to shrink and pulse with unrest. Malik's lips tightened, a mixture of fury, caution, and something softer flickering in his gaze toward her. Concern, perhaps. The weight of their forced alliance pressed in, yet beneath it stirred a shared determination. Rashad's voice was a steel trap as he warned, "You will regret stirring shadows, best left buried." Farid's laughter was bitter and sharp. "Regret lies with those clutching power at the cost of truth." Aaliyah took a step forward, pain and power intertwining in her defiant stance. "Then let the truth rise like the desert sun, blinding and unstoppable." The tension swelled, a storm gathering within Zahram Palace, ready to break apart the fragile illusions they clung to. Then, from the darkness behind Rashad, a sudden movement, a slender hand, fast as a striking viper, reached out with deadly precision. The blade flashed, catching the chandelier's light for a heartbeat before plunging toward what everyone hoped would not be a fatal target. Malik's eyes widened in shock and fury as time seemed to slow. The hall froze. The balance of power hung by a single thread, and the secret assassin's identity would shatter everything they believed about loyalty, love, and the Empire's future. The heavy silence shattered with the sharp report of a blade striking steel. Malik's quick hand caught the assailant's wrist before the dagger could find its mark. Every muscle tightened with shock and urgency. The hall froze, breaths caught, eyes wide, as the truth settled like dust over Zahram Palace. Rashad's glare burned through the shadows, recognizing the attacker's face in a heartbeat. "Enough," he commanded, voice low but final, his empire trembling, on the brink of chaos, yet still demanding control. The figure struggled, her veil slipping to reveal Layla's fierce eyes, no longer hidden, her secret as revealed as the dagger in her hand. "For too long," she whispered, "I have carried the weight of silence. The time has come to dismantle the lies." Her voice trembled with years of pain and fierce resolve. Aaliyah stepped forward, her scarred face lit by the flickering chandeliers. A queen finally rising from the ashes of betrayal. "Together," she announced, "we will face the truth that has bound us in chains stronger than these palace walls." Malik released Layla's wrist, eyes flickering between the women. Fear, anger, and a reluctant respect mixing in his guarded gaze. "What you seek," he said carefully, "will change everything. It did not take long for the truths, long buried beneath layers of gold and shadow, to unravel. Rashad's empire, built on ruthless ambition and forgotten sacrifices, was exposed piece by piece by documents Layla had kept hidden, proofs of old alliances broken, betrayals traded like currency, and lies passed down as legacy. The court's whispers erupted into tense debate, but Aaliyah's steady voice quelled the unrest. "This empire can rise anew only if the past is no longer a shackle, but a lesson." Even Rashad's proud visage faltered as the weight of his choices settled upon him. The man who once sought to silence his daughter now had no place to hide. In the hours that followed, walls fell. Not those of stone, but those built from fear and pride. Malik and Aaliyah, once strangers bound by a transaction, now stood united. The ember of mistrust transformed into a steady flame of partnership. Their alliance was no longer one of convenience. It was forged by shared scars and a vision for a future free from shadows. Rashad, faced with the truth of his own making, relinquished his grip on power, not in defeat, but in a rare act of humility, born from recognition that love and legacy must intertwine. He spoke to those assembled, his voice carrying the weight of years. "I was blinded by the thirst for control. May this night mark the dawn of a reign founded on truth and unity." The murmurs turned to cautious hope. The courtiers, once divided by whispers and suspicion, found themselves drawn into a new vision, one where strength came not from dominance, but from trust. As dawn approached, the golden light crept slowly over Zahram Palace's marble towers, bathing the gardens in a soft glow. Aaliyah stood on the balcony beside Malik, the desert breeze teasing strands of her dark hair. The scars on her face no longer marks of shame, but badges of resilience. Malik turned to her, his usual stoicism softened by something genuine and rare. "You have changed this place and me," he said quietly, "not as a possession, but as a partner." Aaliyah smiled, the warmth reaching her eyes, liberation finally stretching through her soul. "And you have shown me that even the coldest walls can melt." In the courtyard below, servants and nobles alike prepared for the celebration, a wedding finally born of love, not duty. The palace, once suffocating with secrets, now breathed with promise. Children's laughter echoed faintly through the marble halls, a herald of tomorrow's hope. The empire had survived the storm, not by silencing its shadows, but by embracing them, allowing the light of truth to heal and transform. Malik and Aaliyah, hand in hand, stepped into that new dawn, their hearts echoing the desert's eternal rhythm, a story not of power and pain, but of redemption, courage, and a love fierce enough to rewrite fate itself. The years ahead would hold challenges, but together they would face every horizon. Under the vast Arabian sky, Zahram Palace stood renewed, a beacon of strength forged in the fires of truth, where the tale of the billionaire Sheikh and his scarred queen would be whispered for generations, not as a legend of cruelty, but as a testament to love's undeniable triumph.